Right. What about yours then, Maui? What is your good point?
Yeah, mine's taking from the second place finishers at Yala Compass. I didn't really want to actually focus on the whole side of NIP because I feel like I still need to see a little bit more. I'm not sure, I can't really tell yet or this early on if this is an aberration type of run, if this was almost for them, what would be a fluky run to the finals. But I wanted to just talk about Wrinkle, their opper, because I think Wrinkle is the real deal. Wrinkle playing on bait before, one of the signings where if you didn't really know who he was, I wasn't too familiar with his game in all honesty because he was just playing on bait for such a long time. You would occasionally see play pretty well at, say, like an RMR or like a closed qualifier for the major, but they didn't really play too much in terms of tier one events. But now that I'm seeing him much more, I'm really starting to enjoy Wrinkle's game, especially on the T side. Wrinkle, for me, is a big reason why NIP was able to have as good of the T sides as they did. Because Wrinkle, if you look at the opening kill statistics, he's taking the most opening kills of any opper, and it's by a significant margin on the T side. The only person that has above a 20% attempt rate on the T side beyond him is Zorte with pretty much 20%, 20.5%. Whereas on the other hand, Wrinkle is taking 27% of opening attempts. And when you watch his play for NIP and you like get into what's making him so interesting is that this dude's just flat out good at moving with the op. He's good at moving and shooting. And the thing is that in CS2 right now, it feels so limited. I think one of the main mechanics of this game that to me made opping a little bit more difficult was that you feel a little bit like you're more on ice skates. There was this really stupid Scream clip where he came back from Valorant briefly and was playing a little bit of Counter-Strike 2. And he was saying the thing is in CS2, when he's playing it, it doesn't feel like when he counter strafes, he fully stops. He's like skating a little bit more. And some people were like clowning him because it's like, oh, Valorant stops for you. But it's like, no, I think that's actually a little bit of a thing. If you don't counter strafe perfectly, like people were kind of thinking, is this sub tick? What is it? I'm not sure if it's the game engine or it's sub tick at this point, but it does feel like you really have to consciously stop moving before you actually hit left click, which is why so many oppers were so bad at moving and shooting in the beginning of the game. But Wrinkle, he's past that. Like Wrinkle can absolutely peek into angles, and the only few people that I think are that good as him is like Brokey, Zywoo, Monacy, obviously. And yeah, I mean, I'm not saying Wrinkle's at their level. He's has to develop a lot of other aspects of his game, but when it comes to actually just peeking into a new angle and shooting somebody on that angle, Wrinkle's insanely good. And that's one thing that's gotten me excited about NIP is that they have an opper who can play aggressively on the T side, which is going to make this team inherently fun to watch, even if you strip away all of the other aspects of this lineup. So I've got to give a big shout out to Wrinkle.
Okay. What do you think, Heku?
I never got to interact with him, so I personally don't know him as a person. For example, when it comes to Hetrick, I really like him as like this like cool little kid, but unfortunately it felt like the pressure maybe in some kind of way was a bit too much. But that's maybe because at that moment he was kind of brought into like a team that had so many names and right away had maybe higher expectations than with the current NIP because it kind of through the time the NIP maybe like status kind of like went down. So like now when he comes in, he's like, okay, now like I'm surrounded by not like super mega legends of the scene. Like maybe we can grow together, and that puts like less pressure on Wrinkle in comparison to Hetrick. Baseline is like hard for me like to compare in like who's like a better at the role, just because I think this kind of pressure like can have like a huge influence on your performance. So for now, it's really hard for me to judge about him as a player and as a person, but he's showing a lot of promise from like what we're seeing.
Yeah, on this one, I'll do a little bit about Wrinkle, but I also want to make a bigger point actually about NIP since this like new regime, since the guy went out and the Eric Wendell guy took over. Because when this pickup was happening, this actually is one of those ones where I had a few other like smaller coaches in the scene DM me and be like, actually, that player's probably going to be pretty good. Like a bunch of people behind the scenes say he's actually like a real prospect and he's legit. And basically, they told me crucially, it's not like the Hetrick pickup because as we've pointed out many times on this show, the weirdest part about the origin story of Hetrick to NIP is he wasn't an AWPer, and then they just sold him from Na'Vi Academy to NIP as if he was like the Monacy at home meme or whatever. And then the problem was he not only wasn't Monacy, but like he was adjusting to the role. And you can see, if you actually watch him, because the joke is he outplays r1nkle spot in B. It's like, he's not bad, like he's still decent, but the difference was that wasn't even where his hype was. His hype was as a rifler. This guy actually is a real AWPer. And by the way, I actually agree. If you just watch since he joined the team, and obviously they've gradually been making the lineup change because they only brought Isaac in recently. Like he's looked pretty promising from as soon as he stepped into NIP, actually, even though there was online games initially. Like, it actually does look like this is pretty good scouting, which is why I want to draw this into the bigger point, which is, this is where I actually feel like, literally, it's why it's a good contrast. I actually think the head trick move is why people weren't hyped about this one. Because the head trick move was kind of like a weird one anyway. Like, why are you bringing a Ukrainian team into like traditionally like Swedish NIP, you know? And that one was where it was all Nordic players. It was like, what even is this mixture, basically? Unless he is Monacy, he's not going to make it. Whereas, first of all, I agree, there's no pressure in the same way now. In fact, actually, people have probably gone too far the other way and they've set zero expectations for NIP and they actually think it should be trash. And that's why I wanted to bring up this bigger point actually about the new regime, because I did actually, by the way, you saw if I went back and forth with that guy. I actually did reach out to that guy and do like a call with him. And I will say behind the scenes, they actually were way, way better than the last NIP people and the things I'd heard about them. Like, the difference is, as far as I know under this regime, it isn't like some calc type GM type figure, like I'm the God Emperor making all the moves. I was told basically it really is people like Threat and Exist like have been empowered to make these moves and decide who gets to join the team. So actually this isn't like someone, because if you saw those interviews I did, the reason those were infuriating was they were like a bad fucking meme about management, where it was like, you know, Hampus would be telling Calc like, hey, you know, we could just get Brolan now and then have Device and Brolan, and he was like, yeah, understood, I've got your ESSA tag, and you were like, oh, fuck it, I said Brolan, like, you know. And so the problem is, like, those moves kill you. Whereas, based on what I've heard, first of all, I don't think they have a massive budget if you look who they're picking up. But actually, if you look at the signings, I'm not joking, these are the signings they've made since that regime took over, guys, right? They had Maxter already, but he was like a young ninja or whatever the fuck, right? That guy actually looks legit. He actually looks pretty decent, actually, considering he's a player I didn't have on the radar. The Wrinkle guy actually looks really promising. Like, he could actually be a legit, like, maybe in a year from now, he could be like a top 20 player. And then you've also got the Isaac guy, which people have just dodged that one. Dude, that makes them even a Swedish core again, which is what everyone wanted, right? Didn't we all want them to at least have the option to like flex and be in Swedish? Because the point is now, you look at the lineup now, yes, right now you're going to be an international team, but like you're only like a year away from a world where like you get the Jacob and the Brolin, and then you got like the godlike Swedish lineup again. That's even like a real possibility again for an NIP. And I actually think when you look at their squad, considering the Isaac guy actually was pretty decent, he's just more of a supportive element if people don't know. He's not like a star player. Actually, this lineup started to look pretty decent. The Alex guy, by the way, was never a bomb. It was just a weird pickup for NIP, wasn't it? You thought like, wait, Alex over Alexi B, but like, it's not a bad player. I mean, clearly he was all right in Movistar. So I actually think the lineup's not as bad as people think. I do think they'll probably get overhyped because of this Yala Compass run. Like, they're probably not going to be like a fucking dark horse to win events, guys. Like, I even think if you go and look, like, their bracket draw was fucking ridiculous, that bottom side. Like, if anything, that's why I even joked. Like, there's a wonder, like, Fnatic could have been in the final when you look at that bracket draw. So it's probably a one-off. But I do think, like, in general, bearing in mind everyone's put the expectations down to zero, I'm starting to get more interested and like, kind of a little bit hyped about NIP again. Like, put it this way, each move looks like it's going in the right direction. I feel like they're on the uptick. They're at least an interesting team to watch again. And crucially, yeah, at least this player, like, the Wrinkle guy clearly has talent. You could just go watch any of his games. He's got some skills. I'm with you. Right?
I think also,
go on.
One more thing. I think like, what really helps Wrinkle in this team is that his IGL is also like not Swedish. So
Sure.
maybe right now, like it's not. I'm saying what I'm gonna say is not something like confirmed, but like I can imagine a situation like with the previous roster where they had like a lot of like Swedish players and they had Hattrick. If your IGL is Swedish and for example Hattrick maybe like dies, they might go all Swedish.
Yeah, of course.
And even though like obviously that makes sense because that is
Yes.
that helps to get a better result. But to Hattrick, he might feel a bit like more isolated. Like he's sitting there and just listening to something that he doesn't know. Maybe
Sure.
doesn't like get to observe, like, and also like, learn on the run because like now they are going to into this like state. With Alex, since he is the IGL, so most of the communication is happening through him. So it is gonna be in English. So like in any scenario, like Wrinkle will be able to get the information, like at least like learn it, we get the confirmation. Like he'll feel like maybe less left out.
Yes. I will say, even though in those teams, like same as when Big goes speaking English, well, it's like 3 or 4 players are German. That's one thing I always do wonder about. People just don't mention it because it's awkward. It's like, yeah, obviously you speak in English when the guy who in the team who like Mantu's there or whatever. But I have always thought they make it sound like it's a positive. Like, yeah, but after that in a 2v2 we can just speak German. I think imagine how isolating it must be being that guy. They're like, yeah, guys, get him. Like, you don't have any clue what anyone's saying in that round. Like, you have no idea what info they're giving or anything. You just feel it the whole time. Like, shit, when they're just going to replace me and speak this language without me. Like, that's in the back of your... I'm with you. The IGL's a pretty good role to... As long as he's there, you're safe, aren't you? Exactly. Basically, if you're Wrinkle, what you have to do is... Alex is like that principle where, you know that thing they say, Maui, where they say you don't actually have to survive in Africa, be faster than a lion. You just have to be with someone who's not as fast as a lion. As long as you're faster than him, you're okay. He'll get killed first. So if you're Wrinkle, only worry if Alex gets replaced and they're like, oh, we brought in Golden. Like that, shit your pants then, mate. But as long as Alex is there, you're safe. In fact, every day I'd be DMing Alex, how's it going? It's still... Things are looking up. Yeah, everything going great with the coaches. Listen, I want to be a good teammate. Let me know how things are going, right? Okay. See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.